The internet is full of fake history facts, but today we are looking at the real deals. From an army unit that went to war and came back with a negative casualty rate to a literal dead body put on trial by the church, we are counting down 10 historical events that are 100% historically documented and completely insane. The war gained one man. Wars are usually tragic and bloody, except for the Austro-Prussian War of 1866. At least, if you ask the tiny country of Liechtenstein. As the famous story goes, Liechtenstein sent a small military contingent of 80 soldiers to guard a quiet mountain pass on the Austrian border. They spent the brief conflict enjoying the views, completely avoiding any actual combat. When the war ended, the army marched back home. But when officials counted the returning men, they didn't find 80. They found 81. While precise historical troop logs are still debated by historians, with some older accounts claiming it was actually 58 men who returned as 59, the phenomenon is absolutely real. The extra person was an Austrian liaison officer who accompanied them back home to general rejoicing. It remains the only military campaign to finish with a negative casualty rate. The London Beer Flood. On October 17, 1814, a massive 22-foot-tall wooden vat at the Moo and Company Brewery in London burst open. The sheer pressure ruptured neighboring vats, instantaneously releasing over 323,000 gallons of fermenting porter beer onto the streets. A literal tidal wave of beer slammed into a densely populated neighborhood, destroying houses and collapsing the walls of a local pub. Tragically, 8 people lost their lives, not from alcohol poisoning from drinking it, but from drowning or being crushed under the collapsing debris. The disaster was eventually ruled by a court to be an unavoidable act of God, leaving the brewery completely off the hook. The Great Stork Derby. In 1926, a wealthy and eccentric Canadian lawyer named Charles Vance Miller passed away. Having no immediate heirs, he left behind a bizarre final will that sparked a decade of social chaos. The most insane clause? He declared that the bulk of his massive estate, worth millions today, would be given to whichever Toronto woman could give birth to the most children in the 10 years following his death. What followed was a literal citywide baby-making race known as the Great Stork Derby. In 1936, the race concluded. 4 different mothers who each gave birth to 9 children over the decade ended up splitting the prize, taking home a massive fortune just for expanding their families. The myth of the stolen bucket. If you browse weird history online, you'll constantly hear about the War of the Oaken Bucket, a 1325 conflict where the Italian cities of Bologna and Modena supposedly went to war because someone stole a wooden water bucket, leaving 2,000 people dead. But here's the real twist. That famous internet story is actually backwards. The war didn't start over a bucket. It was caused by a massive bloody political and religious feud between factions supporting the Pope and the Holy Roman Emperor. A massive battle took place at Zapolino involving over 35,000 men. Modena won a decisive victory and chased the retreating Bolognese right up to their city gates. To humiliate their defeated enemies, the winning Modenese soldiers grabbed an ordinary wooden bucket from a well outside the city walls as a victory trophy. So a bucket didn't start a war, but a war did start a 700-year-old grudge. To this day, that exact stolen trophy bucket is still proudly kept on display in Modena. The Unsolvable Manuscript. Carbon dated by scientists to the early 15th century, the Voynich manuscript features hundreds of pages of intricate illustrations of alien-looking plants, naked women bathing in strange interconnected tubes, and complex cosmic charts. There's just one problem. It is written in an entirely unknown alphabet that does not exist anywhere else in human history. For hundreds of years, the world's greatest minds have tried to read it. Elite World War II codebreakers failed. Modern artificial intelligence models have analyzed it and come up empty. It isn't just random gibberish. The text perfectly follows strict grammatical and linguistic rules. It remains history's ultimate unsolved literary mystery. The Year Without a Summer. Imagine waking up in the middle of June and it's snowing outside. In 1816, the Northern Hemisphere experienced a climate nightmare. Frost destroyed crops in May, massive snowstorms blanketed New England in June, and rivers remained frozen in July. Food shortages caused global riots and economic collapse. The cause wasn't supernatural, it was volcanic. A year prior, Mount Tambora erupted in Indonesia. It blew so much ash and sulfur dioxide into the stratosphere that it blocked out global sunlight for over a year. Strangely, the gloomy indoor weather in Switzerland forced a young writer named Mary Shelley to pass the time by writing a horror story. That story became Frankenstein. Corporal Wojtek, the Soldier Bear. Many military units have animal mascots, but during World War II, the Polish 22nd Artillery Supply Company did something completely unhinged. They officially drafted a 500-pound Syrian brown bear into the army. Named Wojtek, this wasn't just a pet. To get him on a British transport ship, they had to legally enlist him. He was given the rank of private, received his own paybook, and even had a serial number. Wojtek lived exactly like his fellow soldiers. He slept in their tents, wrestled with the men, drank beer, and literally ate cigarettes. But he wasn't just there for morale. During the brutal Battle of Monte Cassino in Italy, Wojtek physically helped his unit by carrying heavy 100-pound crates of artillery shells to the front lines under heavy gunfire. He survived the war, was promoted to the rank of corporal, and lived out his retirement peacefully in the Edinburgh Zoo. The Dancing Plague of 1518. In July of 1518, a woman named Frau Trofea stepped into a street in Strasbourg, France, and began to uncontrollably dance. Within a month, around 400 people joined her. They weren't celebrating. Witnesses recorded that the dancers were screaming in agony, their feet bleeding through their shoes. Local authorities actually hired musicians and built a wooden stage, believing the only way to cure them was to let them dance it out. While later 19th century accounts claim up to 15 people died a day, local 1518 town logs don't confirm an exact daily body count, but they do confirm that many did collapse and perish from sheer exhaustion, strokes, and heart attacks. Today, historians blame it on mass psychogenic hysteria or ergot poisoning from toxic fungi in the rye bread supply. The real Emu War. In 1932, the government of Australia officially sent the military to deal with a population of over 20,000 emus that were destroying vital wheat crops. The internet loves to joke that a massive army clashed with birds and lost a giant war. But the real story is much funnier. The entire army deployed consisted of exactly 3 guys, Major G.P.W. Meredith and 2 soldiers, armed with 2 heavy Lewis machine guns and a truck. They quickly found out that emus are incredibly fast and don't bunch up into easy targets. The birds naturally split into small, highly maneuverable packs, easily evading the soldiers. After a few weeks of wasting thousands of rounds of ammunition with almost zero effect on the bird population, the government canceled the operation to save taxpayer money. The emus won by default, completely outwitting 3 guys with a truck. The Corpse Synod. Taking our #1 spot is the most macabre political tantrum in human history. In the year 897 AD, the Catholic Church conducted a formal trial in Rome. The defendant was accused of perjury and violating sacred church rules. The only issue, the defendant, Pope Formosus, had been dead for 9 months. The reigning Pope Stephen VI hated his predecessor so much that he had Formosus's rotting corpse dug up out of the grave, dressed in full sacred papal robes, and propped up on a throne to face a trial. A young priest hid behind the corpse to speak for it. Unsurprisingly, the dead pope lost. The court stripped the body, cut off its blessing fingers, and threw the remains into the Tiber River. But here is the ultimate twist. The public was so universally horrified by this gruesome stunt that it sparked a massive riot in Rome. Within months, Pope Stephen VI was overthrown, thrown into a dungeon, and strangled to death in his cell. Meanwhile, the mutilated body of Formosus, washed up on the riverbank, was quietly rescued by a monk and was eventually reburied in St. Peter's Basilica with full honors. It stands as a terrifyingly real reminder that truth is always darker than fiction. Which of these historical events surprised you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you want more deep dives into the weirdest true corners of our past, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and give this video a thumbs up. Thanks for watching, and remember, history is always weirder than fiction.